In the video I made, Character Positioning Part 1, I talked about how characters were turned towards and away from the camera and what those tended to mean. Here I want to talk about blocking multiple characters within a frame, say 2 to 3 characters, and how that makes meaning. Anytime you have 2 or more characters in the frame, you're automatically and within a composition talking about the relationship in that particular moment in the movie, and you are sort of shading and coloring that relationship. Do you want the characters to be friendly? Do you want them to be in love, at odds? Do you want them to hate each other? How do you place them in the frame? Who's more dominant and who's weaker? These are questions that come up just with compositions and placing characters. Obviously, if you place characters close together or in a sort of hugging, touching relationship, they love each other. If you place them far apart, though, in many circumstances where they're far apart, the distance between them is a metaphor for the relationship distance between them. Pretty obvious, pretty straightforward, but yeah, this is true. The closer they are on frame, distance-wise, thus the closer they are in the scene in terms of their ideas or their relationship. But the farther apart they are, this can also mean that they are far apart or they are estranged from each other. Now, far apart can either mean horizontally, left versus right side, or it can mean depth. One person deep in the background, the other person closer to the foreground. Something like that will tell you estrangement and distance or not. Another obvious thing is to say, well, if a character's higher up in the frame or the character's lower in the frame, you have 2 characters in the frame, one's higher, lower, just vertically, that can indicate dominance or power or weakness, the lower character being the weaker character, the taller character being the more powerful one. Now, one word of caution here before I continue on. This is not 100% of the time true. You have to look at context. Context completely matters. Within a scene, within a point in the movie, it may change. Directors may find new ways of framing characters, and it may mean something different if one's high versus low. So you're going to have to figure this out within the context. But actually, as a general rule, for classical cinema, for the sort of film grammar techniques that early Hollywood created, spread throughout the world, these rules still hold up pretty well. I don't know how much, but 60% of the time, 80%, probably. When you have 3 or more characters, you can do even more. So in this scene from The Matrix, for example, Neo, the hacker, is introduced to a hero of his, Morpheus. He doesn't know this man. Morpheus wants to help him out, tell him the truth, and this is the famous red pill, blue pill scene. Well, if you see the shot of Neo greeting Morpheus, there's a character in between the two of them. It's the character Trinity. Now, she has instigated this liaison and helped Neo come find Morpheus. So she's literally a go-between. She's between them, and she's been metaphorically a go-between, helping the two of them unite. But also, she's a bridge for Neo, and Neo's maybe a little hesitant at meeting Morpheus. So he's got Trinity there to sort of be the buffer between the two of them. And you see, it's literal on the screen. She is that buffer between them. But when there's a cut and then you see Morpheus greet Neo, now there's no one between them. Trinity is not between them. And this may show you Morpheus's perspective of Neo, that he's more eager to greet him, that he's more connected to Neo, that he's more interested in meeting, let's say. And so these 2 characters are closer. Thus you have 2 different ways of looking at the same scene. And it may be Neo's perspective more hesitant versus Morpheus' perspective more eager to be together and closer in this newfound relationship between the 2. Here's another shot from the movie Say Anything, a 1989 high school rom-com in which a character seated, Lloyd Dobler, played by John Cusack, is meeting his girlfriend's dad and family. Girlfriend's depicted on the left, the dad's on the right, there's an observer in the foreground. And the question would be, well, why is this boyfriend, this new boyfriend, in the middle but seated lower? You may think this is random or there was no intention here, and it doesn't even actually matter if there's intention. The movie is what it is, and so we can ask these questions. Why is one character seated, the other 2 standing? And it is in the scene of power dynamic. This boyfriend has never met the family. It's awkward. He's nervous, as boyfriends typically are when meeting family members. And so, okay, he is worried, and thus he feels weaker, less powerful in the scene, whereas the father, standing on the right side, may be the most dominant person in the frame, arguably. Now, even though the boyfriend feels weaker, he is literally going in between or between the 2, his girlfriend and her dad. That is a theme in this movie, that the boyfriend is coming in between, is a barrier to the 2 of them. These 2 characters on either side of him have a great relationship. They're good friends, father and daughter, but he is the new man in her life, and he's coming in between them and maybe taking over for her father as the man in her life. Now you could see it as antagonism, him between the father and the daughter, but in the movie it's also bridge, like the Trinity shot earlier, where he is a point of connection between the father and the daughter. If the father and the daughter are ever at odds about something, maybe this boyfriend's going to help them out, help them get back together. And so actually, spoiler alert, but not giving much away, that's actually what happens in the movie. So once he's weaker in the frame, he's a point of connection, and he's also a barrier. This is sort of the miracle of movies, that in compositions like this, you can have multiple different meanings, and it's highly ambiguous and complex. Similar kind of thing happens in a very famous scene from Lawrence of Arabia, where Lawrence is guided into the Arabian desert by his guide, but then here comes a stranger in the background. Well, the stranger, as you know, if you've seen the movie, becomes Lawrence's friend and close acquaintance. Here he literally becomes in between the two of them, rides up very slowly as a stranger, black rider on the horizon in the background. He will come into the foreground, though, and do something. I shouldn't tell you what, but he becomes Lawrence's friend. He's literally coming in between Lawrence and his guide. Now, there are probably tens of thousands of ways to shoot three people within a frame, so I'm only telling you one or two ways, and each movie has a different context, and given its themes, its ideas, its subject matter, its morality, and all those sorts of things, the ways three or more people can be shot in a frame can differ. And of course, if you have camera movement or extra edits, you can even add more meaning and more content. So character position gets more complicated as we go, but I hope these few little examples help you think about the next time you see in compositions two or more characters interacting on frame. Think about where they're placed, how they're placed in relationship to each other, the distance between them, the height, and so on, and you might see the way the movie is trying to manipulate things or show you the dynamic between the two of them and their relationship. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Have a great day.